remember that one teacher who made a difference, believed in us, challenged us, or just made learning fun? Well, now's your chance to say thank you in a big way with iHeartRadio's Thank a Teacher. It's powered by Donors Choose, nominating an outstanding public school teacher who's gone above and beyond for their students to win $5,000 to stock their classroom with whatever they need. Help us say thank you to educators shaping our future. Nominate your favorite teacher now, iHeartRadio.com/teachers.
From a good memory from texter Todd. Carl called Moss a great player when Mr. Fun cold called Carl, pretending to be then president of football operations, Mr. Ted Thompson, and forced Carl to say Randy Moss is a great player. And, of course, Carl believed Ted Thompson actually called him. I forgot about that. That's really good recall. That is for sure. Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line is open at 646-86. Can we get TJ Rubley to start for the Packers again? When was that? Do you remember TJ Rubley?
I don't.
You're too young, yeah.
Listen to the station, though.
Yeah, TJ Rubley was a good one as well. So we got the Wild tonight on the Fan, correct?
That is correct.
We got the Wolves on the Timberwolves channel. Later, they're in Phoenix. I don't know the start time on that game, but
I got it at 8.
8 Central? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The Phoenix Suns, by the way, the Phoenix Suns actually off to a better start. I think they're above 500, actually.
9-6.
Not here to say they're great, but they're not. They don't look to be pushovers, and we're still waiting for the Wolves to win their first game against a team with a winning record as well. That continues to be a bit of an issue. I'll add that I now view, well, we know the Vikings game is a must-win game for the Purple, right? I'll add that I think the Gopher game at Northwestern, actually technically at Wrigley Field against Northwestern, is also a must-win situation for the Gophers. And you say, well, Dan, what do you mean must-win? And what's going to happen if they lose? Well, if you lose, you can't get to 8 victories, which means you're at 7. I can even do that math right. If you take care of Wisconsin next week, and you're going to go to even in the meaningless bowl, on the meaningless bowl list, the meaningless bowl pecking order, that would be then a completely meaningless game that you would play at 7 victories. You might be able to move up a little bit with 8 because it looks like there's going to be 3 Big Ten teams that make the postseason tournament. Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon, right? So that's one reason it's a must-win. But I'll give you another one. It's now official that Indiana University, for the first time in forever, is no longer the losingest college football program in American football history. They've had that distinction for a long time. Problem is, they keep winning, undefeated this year, and Northwestern is losing enough that for the moment, right now, Northwestern has replaced Indiana as the losingest college football program, regardless of conference. So the Gophers in 2025 don't want that on their resume, do they? You are required to go to Wrigley Field and win that game, or among your losses, one will be to the worst, in terms of losses, program in the history of college football, right? I mean, that should, I think that pretty much explains it. And it would also mean that we would drop to 0-5, I think, on the road, right? So, all those reasons, I think, are make it as every bit as much a must-win situation for the Gophers as it is for the Vikings. Now, we looked it up. I think you told me Northwestern was 3 or 4 point favorites in this game. I don't know if the movement, if the line has moved at all since then. So we'll have to see. Somebody's saying T.J. Rubley was around 1994.
I've got bad news. It's moved even more. It's Northwestern now 4-point favorite.
Really? 4-point favorites. Huh. Interesting. So we'll see where it goes. I guess what I'm saying is it's a big weekend for both of our favorite football teams. The Gophers on Saturday, a game you can hear on the Fan, pregame at 9. And Vikings on Sunday, Green Bay, pregame 10. Kickoff just past high noon. What time is Bears Steelers? Is that also a noon start? Will you double check?
I believe
that?
it is.
It is,
yes.
Okay. And do we have the update on A-Raj? Is he expected to start for the Steelers? He said, he had famously the quote, I own you, taunting Bears fans a while back. That was several years ago.
Listed as questionable.
Still listed as questionable. And it's his left wrist, I think. So we'll see where that goes. But I think that is as you said, you looked it up, that's a noon start as well. Let's get a pause in. Don't forget Ben Goessling is going to join at the bottom of the hour. Interesting pick by Ben at StarTribune.com for this game. He has to pick a game every week, the Vikings game every week. And interesting conclusion he reaches, which we'll talk about with him at 4:30. And we'll get the very latest on Puck with Russo Radio. That is scheduled for 5 o'clock.
One night, one stage, one epic band, My Chemical Romance, Target Field, August 24th. Grab your tickets before they're gone. Get all the details today, KFAN.com. Keyword calendar.
Is losingest based on percentage or number of losses? That's a very fair question. I can't remember, but we'll try to find it. I thought it was timely just because obviously Indiana's having this breakthrough back-to-back seasons. And I guess I didn't realize until this year that Indiana was the losingest. I mean, I knew it was inept and it was bad, but I guess I was unaware. And I think maybe some of that has to do with how far back you go and how many games you play. That's a big part of it as well. Wow. There's some angry Northwestern fans checking in. Dan, Northwestern has gone to the Rose Bowl and won the Big Ten a couple times in my lifetime. The Gophers have never gotten close. There's some more viciousness there. That is for sure. Game means nothing for either team. They are what they are. Now, does he mean the Packers-Vikings game, or does he mean the Gophers-Northwestern? Northwestern, by the way, still needs one more victory to get a bowl game. And I can't remember who they play Illinois next week. So I'm sure they're figuring they're the more desperate team because technically, if you care about meaningless bowl games, the Gophers are already there. And Northwestern needs to get there with one more victory either this week or next as well. You get to a couple of other texts via the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. I'll mention again, if you have other Vikings-Packers memories from Lambeau, because that's where the game is played, keep them coming. I think we've covered a lot of the good ones and the infamous ones. The weather forecast continues to be very promising, sort of like here, right? It's supposed to be in the 50s.
Yeah, it's supposed to be nice.
Pretty balmy, and I don't think a lot of wind, and I don't think precip is going to be an issue, right? There is no indication that there's going to be any kind of a precipitation problem as well. So I guess it would be called good football weather. I actually like it to be a little chillier than that. But that's the forecast that we're getting, kind of similar to here, because I think we're supposed to be in the 50s all weekend, correct? And before by Thanksgiving, I think we're much colder again here. Is PJ coaching for Coyle's job and therefore his own? That's an interesting way to put it. I don't have any knowledge of that. I wonder if that texter does. I don't think. I doubt it, but maybe there's something I don't know about the way Mark Coyle is viewed. That would be probably a better question for Guardsy. I'm not aware of anything there. And to pair the two, I get it. You're saying, well, that's the guy who brought him here. Again, I'll continue to say, I don't think. Here's what's changed, I think, with PJ a little bit. I was talking to a source who should remain nameless about this issue. I think one of the things that's changed is that I no longer believe that PJ is a fashionable choice for other jobs. I'm not saying he couldn't get another job someplace else. But I don't think, for whatever reason, he's viewed as, let's put it this way, when his name gets speculated upon this year, I think it's just been habit by media jackals who are just looking for the list and go, oh yeah, put PJ on the list because he's usually on the list. I don't sense that he's a hot commodity, I guess is what I'm trying to say at this point. Doesn't mean he's a bad coach. He's not a bad coach. But I don't get the feeling that, put it this way, if he gets another contract extension, it's going to be one of those 1 year ones that are kind of meaningless without a lot of money involved. I don't think it's like, okay, look at he's on the short list. I don't sense he's on a lot of short lists. And one of the issues that we haven't really talked probably very much about, but I'm even hearing from Gopher Rubes, is whether this team has capitalized on its NIL, spent the NIL on the right people. Have they maximized there? How have they done in the portal? We know they don't have the resources. Don't text me. I know of schools like Ohio State or Oregon. Although, again, as Glenn Mason pointed out to us, Minnesota's always been at a disadvantage, but we are still, I think, we still evaluate. And one of the issues we get into, it's a very sportsy edition of Enough Said tonight, which, by the way, will be on regular time on Fox 9 at 9:30, they tell me. I think after a college basketball game. It's that we're at a point now where I feel as if the people who say, how can we compete with Oregon? How can we compete with Ohio State? Most of us aren't even asking him to win those games, but we are asking him to hang in for a quarter and a half. Make it interesting. Maybe you shock the world, or maybe you bring a game, you compete enough to make the game still seem viable in the third quarter. And they're not doing any of those things. The quote, what was the quote from that got my attention? I think it was, I just saw this, I think this was from earlier this week. Let me see if I can find it here on the fly, because it definitely got my attention, and I'm not sure that I completely understood it. Here's the quote from PJ, and I think it's his attempt to sort of explain away the blowout losses on the road. We've been edged on the road 152-33. Our scars remind us of where we've been. And that sounds highfalutin. It really does, and it sounds very philosophical. But in your ninth year, aren't we supposed to kind of be past having to be scarred? 152-33 in the road games? The old, well, remember where you were? Because, you have to be, sometimes you got to go to the depths to then dig deep, plant your feet, and appreciate when you headed in the other direction. I just don't think, though, that level of scars, I thought we were supposed to be past. Which is very different than saying we got to go ahead and win 2 of those 3 games. I'm not even asking you to win 1 of those 3 games. I'm asking you to be competitive in 1 of those 3. And they weren't. And then the first game was at Cal, which they ended up losing by 14. A little deceptive on the score. They weren't out of that game totally, but they really didn't come very close to winning it as well. So I know what concerns me is if they beat Northwestern, it's going to be, well, righted the ship, responded nicely to what took place in Oregon. You beat a mediocre team. On the road, finally got a road win. That's great, but I don't think it should change anything about what has largely taken place this season. And that's what I would be. If I'm a Gopher Rube, that's what would concern me. There's ups and downs. We get it. But this is about more than, winning more games one year, losing a few more games the next year. This is about not even being in the same stratosphere in any of those 4 road games. Certainly the 3 against Oregon, Ohio State, and Iowa. And Iowa is a good team, but they're not an unbeatable team. I mentioned this last week. In fact, Oregon, I think Wisconsin went to Oregon, lost by 14. Wasn't it 21-7? So the idea that you can't, how did they play with them? Now, again, Oregon's had a worse season. I get that. But it's just too easy to say, well, Phil Knight, it's Oregon. What are we going to do? Well, show up. Throw some wrinkle in. Surprise some people for at least a quarter or a quarter and a half. And that has not happened. Not even one. I guess you could say they surprised us with the totality of their victory against Nebraska. But I don't know how much you can take that to the bank if you don't build on it and you don't then follow up with something else that makes that seem more real than it feels today. Ben Goessling, that's what Gerbschmidt calls him. His real name is Ben Goessling. He's going to join us next. If you have Vikings questions, National Football League questions, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. That's 64686.
Time now for the Vikings Report on the Fan, presented by Miller Lite. Vikings wide receiver Adam Thielen joins Dan Barreiro next. And
Gear up for winter at the St. Paul Ice Fishing and Winter Sports Show, December 5th through the 7th at the River Center. Over 190 exhibitors, huge giveaways, including a $24,000 ice castle and expert seminars. Enter for your chance to win a family 4-pack of tickets today on our contest page, KFAN.com. Keyword contest.
Apologies in order to our next guest, Ben Goessling, joining us via the Connecticut Water Systems Hotline. Forgot we had a big fat break at the bottom of the hour, so I went a little bit lengthy. We'll try to make it up to him. Of course, Standard Heating and Air Conditioning brings us Ben every week, or as Gerby calls him, Ben Goessling. But we'll go with Goessling, the proper pronunciation. How often in your lifetime has your last name been mispronounced?
I would put it this way. It is a rare occasion when people get it right
really?
The first time.
Interesting.
It happens so frequently that I have a text shortcut set up in my phone so that when I'm going on a radio show for the first time, I text the producer, just as an FYI, my last name is pronounced, and I put it Goessling like with a U instead of an O so that it looks phonetically like Goessling. So usually people say Goessling.
Goessling, yeah. That's what I figured. Not Goessling. That's Gerby.
Thinks, are you related to Ryan Gosling? It's like,
yeah.
No, it's spelled different, but I'll take it, I guess.
Yeah, that's very, very
true. If I'm in the inheritance, I'll take it.
Yeah, fair enough. That's, I guess Gerby's the only one I think who calls you Goessling, or mostly. I could see where Gosling would be the one people would kind of default to. That probably makes more sense. All right, here's the deal. We've got questions coming in early to the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line for Ben. Keep them coming. That's 64686. A lot of projecting, and, you could say overreaction the last week or two regarding the McCarthy saga. But it's the nature of the business. And we talked about this, that it was probably inherently fair what was going to be expected of JJ from the beginning. But that's the reality that, to a certain extent, I think the Vikings put him in. So we're getting texts like, all right, how many years do you stay patient with him? And the larger question he has is, this is, I believe, 952 guy, does the leash automatically become longer because he's only 22 years old? Because and I know there are times where it is literally a 3-year process for a young quarterback before you figure out exactly what he's got. Can the Vikings afford to wait that long, or how, do you think the leash does get longer simply because he's as young as, from a chronological age standpoint, he's as young as he is?
Well, the thing that's going to change this a little bit, and I wrote about this in my newsletter today, is contract. I mean, they really are coming to a decision point at the end of 2026 already where they have to make a call on his fifth-year option. Basically, by May of, I think, 2027, they will have to decide if they're picking that up, and that is fully guaranteed for his fifth season if they do pick it up. So they will have to make that decision based on what they see the rest of this year and then all of next year. So in terms of how long the leash is, the contract does kind of stipulate some level of a decision point. They can always pick up the option and say, we're going to give it one more year, but I think you have to at least give him this year, the rest of next year, before you know much of anything, both because of that contract and just because it takes a while. I mean, people keep sending me questions about, are they going to bring in somebody to compete with him for the job next year? I mean, I think you could look at having another option at the position, but I think if you're talking about a guy that they drafted 10th overall, knowing that he was coming from a system where he didn't throw the ball as much as a lot of quarterbacks, knowing he was as young as he was, and then you're going to say, okay, before start 6, we have to start thinking about, pulling up the stakes. That's not realistic. I mean, this is a longer process than that, and there are a lot of things we've seen and continue to see that need a lot of work, but I don't think that's unusual for somebody in this spot, and I don't think they were necessarily expecting it to be a completely finished product right away. I mean, a lot of the people you talk to in the building, it's, hey, we know there are going to be some moments that are pretty rough, and the hope is to kind of keep an even keel with the whole thing, and then you're not reacting to the highs and the lows, and that obviously is more important for the people on the inside than the people on the outside. But when all of that stuff is floating, you have to interact a little bit with the outside perceptions. I just think that they understand this is going to take a while, and I don't think anybody is going to pull up stakes on it after this.
Well, let me ask you this, though. You're there every day, so you speak to folks a lot more than I do, so I'll trust your instincts on this for sure. But my gut, at least, tells me that they didn't expect it to be this rough, because I honestly believe
I'd agree with that.
Because it's funny because I have hammered pretty hard on JJ for a number of reasons, but in truth, I think the Vikings are more rippable than he is if, in fact, he's one of those highly unfinished quarterbacks who's going to need as much time as now people are projecting. Because then it's like, well, he is what he is. And he didn't get to practice last year because he was hurt. He hasn't had the reps. So to a certain extent, you'd say, well, it's more a miscalculation on the part of the Vikings that we can pull this off. We might not win a Super Bowl this year, but we can pull this off immediately enough that that's what we're going to go with all the other moves we made, thinking that we had a pretty good core of players to put around him. In the end, I think that's really more a miscalculation on the team than it is necessarily an indictment on what J.J. McCarthy can become.
Yeah, I think all of that is fair. And when I say it's a long process, I think there are stages to that. I think to expect that he was going to look this rough where we're talking about mechanics every week, a topic that's near and dear to your and Garthy's hearts. I know when we're doing it that much, I think that's probably a little bit more than they expected they'd be doing that at this stage of it. And you can talk about, was there hubris in saying we can pull this off, or was it just a bigger project than they thought it was going to be? I think all of those things are fair questions. The piece of it that gets tricky is when you are going to do the Jordan Love style apprenticeship, where you say, let's sit him for 3 years, it gets hard to do that because by the end of year 3, like we say, you're already making something of a decision. So the contracts force you to speed up the timetable a little bit, and they probably could have tried it for another year. I mean, they could have gone out and said, hey, Daniel Jones, we'll give you the 1-year deal.
Yep.
We'll tell you you're coming in as the guy, and then maybe you make McCarthy sit one more year and get that full kind of redshirt year, more so than he would have gotten last year with the injury. I suppose they could have done that, but it also takes 2 to tango for that. Daniel Jones would have had to say, yes, I believe I'm going to get the chance to start here. I'm going to get the year that I want to go out and get on the open market after this year. So there's a lot of complicating factors that go into trying to do it that way as well. And I think there's certainly a lot that if they went back on it, you wonder if they'd knowing what they know now, it's obviously easier to say that. But yes, I think there's been a level of not elementary, but a level of fundamental stuff that there's been more attention to than probably they thought they were going to have to pay. I think that's probably fair.
A couple people, there have been two strains from people in terms of their theories about how to, in the short run, best proceed with him to give him the best chance to be successful and this team to perhaps recover a little bit and try to get back in something resembling a playoff chase. The first is, well, you saw how he finished the game, and there's less to think about then. He's just looking for open people. We're in and out of the huddle, if we huddle at all. And the second strain is roll him out. You guys aren't rolling him out enough. He's athletic. Just get him out of the pocket. Do more boots, that sort of thing. Do either of those arguments, carry weight with you? Is that, in both cases, oversimplifying? What do you think?
I think 2-minute thing is, we always do this where it's, they look so great in the 2-minute drill. Why don't they just do that the whole time? I think that's harder to pull off in reality than it is in theory because you're talking about a limited menu, probably both for the offense and for the defense. And I suppose if you did it the whole time, you're forcing the defense to play in a limited menu and not being able to sub as much as you want. But then you also have to be able to work off of that menu for the quarterback and for the offense. So I think that can work in one setting for a short amount of time. I'm more skeptical about whether it can work for a full game when you have to run 60-some plays off of it. And the other thing with that is at the end of games, you're often in situations where defenses are playing back a little bit because they don't want anything over their heads.
Yeah.
They don't want to give up any big plays. So you're not getting as tight a coverage. You're maybe not getting quite the same degree of pass rush as you might get in other settings. So the transferability of that, I think, is always a little bit hard to estimate. As far as the rollouts and bootlegs, I do think there's more to do there. I think his athleticism is something that you see him use to an advantage. If you can roll him away from some of the pressure, maybe you're tiring people out, you simplify the read so it's a little more of a half-field situation for him. I do think that's been part of the plan. I think that's something they've wanted to probably do more than they have. And, this discussion of can he go to his left, I think is maybe what limits some of that because if you're going to just roll him to his right all the time, people are going to start to sit on that too. So there is some of the complicating factor there if he is struggling to go to his left. And we've certainly seen some of that where when he goes to his left, he's not as natural as when he moves to his right. So they have to figure all of that out as well. But I do think moving the pocket, moving him away from the pass rush can be a useful thing. It can simplify some things and put his mobility to work. So I think that's more of a likely option than going 2-minute as much as some people would maybe talk about them wanting to do.
Ben Goessling joining us on The Fan as he does every Friday. Russo Radio from the X coming up at the top of the hour. Grenard, what do we think? He's listed, I think, officially as questionable. What are we hearing on his availability for Sunday in Lambeau?
Yeah, I think he has a pretty good chance to play. I think he was optimistic about the possibility this week. We'll see how he comes through the weekend. They'll go through probably a little more of a walkthrough tomorrow before they hit the road for Green Bay. But, yeah, I think he'll have a good chance to get back. And if he does, that's a big factor because, we saw last week, I think Dallas Turner did some good things. But they are different when they have him, and they put a lot of pressure on Jordan Love in a couple of those games last year. They got after him at Lambeau, and they blitzed him a lot at the game at US Bank Stadium. So you add Grenard to that pass rush, I do think that's a big deal. I think they'll have a pretty good chance to have him out there Sunday. You picked via StarTribune.com, it's already up. You picked the Packers to win in a low-scoring game. What's your thinking? Yeah, as I thought through this, I thought there's a chance that the Vikings take this one because of how banged up the Packers are. With Josh Jacobs being questionable because of that knee, the Packers have another game on Thanksgiving Day against the Lions, so they may be thinking a little bit about that as they make decisions on injured players. You got a number of receivers that are banged up. Elton Jenkins, their center, is out for the year after hurting his knee a couple weeks ago. So I think the Vikings are the healthier team, and they are more desperate than the Packers. But in the end, I thought that defense for the Packers is going to be a lot for the Vikings to have to deal with. Micah Parsons having to know where he is all the time. Rashawn Gary, they'll have some other pieces. Edgerrin Cooper, their linebacker, has been awfully good. And I think their corners, Carrington Valentine, has played better than a lot of people would have expected too. So I think it's low scoring, but the Packers have been a team that doesn't turn the ball over very much. In fact, the games they've lost lately have been some of the rare opportunities, or rare occasions, I should say, where they've had turnovers. So if the Vikings aren't able to create those, which they haven't done a great job of lately, and if they turn it over a couple of times, which they've done a lot, I think that shapes the game. I think the Packers win it, low scoring. I think it's kind of an ugly defensive struggle. But the Packers at home, especially if they get enough out of Josh Jacobs to kind of extend the game that way, I've got them winning in a close one.
Text that came in listening to our conversation about JJ. He writes this, honestly, talk about how they're going to give McCarthy all of this year, next year is nonsense. If he doesn't show improvement the rest of the year, they're not going to let him waste another year for the rest of the team. To quote your guest, Bill Guerin, from yesterday, this is not a developmental league. He was referring to the NHL, but same is true here. I would assume that you agree that there is a certain level at which they might have to reconsider everything if they don't see enough signs that, all right, he's not the finished product, but we've seen some things over the course of the last couple of months of the season to say, we think we can get there. We see some signs. There's always, I guess, the possibility that if he's continuing to play at the level he's played to this point, that they might have to have a come-to-Jesus meeting in the offseason. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that possibility that they see something that they think this is not fixable. We've got to pull up stakes. I mean, you've seen teams do that.
Yeah.
I think of like Josh Rosen with the Cardinals in the past.
Yeah.
So you may see that happen. I just think if we're going to do the developmental quarterback thing, the idea that 5 or 6 games or 9 or 10 games by the end of the season, whatever we're going to be, probably 12 games if he goes the rest of the way, it is hard to feel like there's a finished product there. We just see so much evidence of this position, especially at the NFL level, taking a long time to learn and master and perfect. And the evidence of that is some of these quarterbacks that bust with their first teams and then they figure it out.
That's true.
A little bit later in their careers. The Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, those types of guys who were Daniel Jones, who are playing awfully well when they have fallen out of favor in their initial market. And in some cases, in Darnold's case, 5 or 6 teams by this point. So it is a really tough position to learn at a high-end level at this stage of it. So the tricky part of it is that you end up with this short timetable to get a guy ready to play on that rookie contract, and it makes it really difficult to pull off. I just think if a team is committing to a young quarterback and developing him, it just feels too soon for them to pull up the stakes completely, unless it's so bad and it looks so unredeemable that they say there's no coming back from this. I don't think we're going to end up there, and I think there's been moments of indications that he can play. He just has to get better with the accuracy. He has to get better at reading things out. But if they see enough of those signs the rest of this year, I do think they're going to say we need to continue to commit to this thing and see where it goes.
Let's face it. I mean, to a certain extent, the Vikings' curse was finishing 14-3 last year. To this extent, once you want to hand the keys over to the young guy, that's where they were kind of stuck, because it's hard after 14-3, even if it ended badly in the postseason, to say we're pulling up stakes and we're rebuilding and we're starting over and we're taking an off year. That's really hard to sell. It's probably hard as competitors for them to sell that to themselves, let alone to the public.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, it's just really interesting how this has gone, because I think about that team last year. They were predicted to win 7 games, and I was among those that was not that enamored with what they were doing, in part because of the questions at quarterback. So they go out and play as well as they do, and then that sort of reshapes it's the old Bud Grant thing. I think he used to tell, I think he told Mike Zimmer this, or maybe told Kevin O'Connell this as well, because he and Kevin O'Connell got pretty tight. Bud told him, don't win too quick, because then you set the expectations really high.
Right.
And then that first year they win 13 games. And so there's been a couple of these back and forth type things where, is this for real? Is this sustainable? They kind of felt after the first one in 22 like it was not. I think they certainly thought with the moves they made this year, yes, we can go in and win, but you do end up in that spot where you say, oh, it's a 14-win team, we're a move or two away, and we can pull it off with a young quarterback if we build everything up around him enough to have everything else working as well as it possibly could. So, yeah, I agree. It is a tricky situation to be in when you go out and have the unexpected success like they did, and then you're sitting there kind of talking yourself into, yes, this can happen for us now. It's always been a tough thing to pull off, and I think, kind of where you set expectations, the floor you set for yourself always has a lot to do with how a season is perceived. Kind of where you started and where you finished relative to what you thought it would be makes a very big difference in the final accounting of it.
At the risk of being late for the next segment and annoying another one of our guests, I'm going to throw one other question in because I think it's a good one, and it's got nothing to do with J.J. McCarthy. Hello, Dan Ben. This is from JDH. Why does B-Flow keep only 3 or 4 corners? Also, clearly D. Turner can play Grenard's edge spot much better than Van Ginkel's. Will this change the longer-term plan, or was Turner only on AVG spot due to the injury? Is Flo generally happy with Dallas Turner? A lot to chew on there.
Yeah, there's a few different threads to the question. I'll try to hit them quickly so as not to. I guess there's a hockey game, so
Yes.
we'll pay attention to that if we need to, I suppose. But sorry for the cheap shot there. But as far as Van Ginkel goes, he does a lot of things that are pretty unique, and they've gotten Dallas Turner doing some of those things. But yes, I do think he's been better at the Grenard spot. I think playing on that side is a better spot for him, and I think that's probably where the long-term fit is. And you have to figure out how long it takes to get him ready to do that. But the sooner they can do that, the more it helps them out financially in the long term. And then the corners thing, yeah, I mean, the move to get rid of Dwight McGloin this week, I think they needed that spot for Ryan Kelly. That's where that spot is going to go. But it is an indication that they haven't felt good enough about his progress. And they do need to figure out depth there. I think that is a major concern both the rest of this year going forward. Fabian Moreau is going to have to play again. So I think that's a big question for them in the rest of this year and then going into the following years from that. And what was the Brian Flores piece of it after that?
The why only keeping 3 or 4. Is Flo generally happy with Dallas Turner, and why keep only 3 or 4 corners?
Yeah. So I think they are seeing progress with Turner. I think they've wanted to see more, probably. But there's a lot
more consistency
in this defense. And then, the corner depth, the other piece of it I'd say really quickly is that when they play 3 safeties as much as they do, they kind of look at their nickel packages and say we don't always have to have corners there as well. So that plays into it, but certainly corner depth is a big question going forward.
Excellent work. Safe travels to Green Bay. We'll chat at some point next week, although we're obviously off late in the week, so we'll figure something out. Thank you.
We will negotiate. Thanks, Dan.
Appreciate you. Ben Goessling, brought to you by Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. Straight to the X. Well, it used to be called the X. Now is it called, was it Grand Casino Arena?
Yes.
And what is the shorthand version of that? What are we preferring? Do we
I'm
have
not sure
one
we
yet?
settled on anything.
We'll ask Russo if he's got an opinion on that. And on the state of his favorite hockey team. All of that is next.